bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices. I'm Alex Hernandez of Noticias Univision Chicago, which airs every weekday morning at 5 and 6. On the show tonight, how fentanyl gets into the U.S. and the devastation it can create in Chicago's communities. Details on the boost to Cook County's minimum wage, which takes effect actually in July. A Google initiative is helping Latino entrepreneurs go from startup to success story.
When you have half a dock wall that can't be used, it's hard to bring shippers, right?
And a push to support the port, the Illinois International Port District, that is. All that coming up. But our first story tonight, the devastating impact of fentanyl and how to help communities impacted by the opioid. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, is made possible in part by the support of these donors.
The synthetic opioid fentanyl remains a danger to Chicagoans. This is especially true in Black and Latino communities where the odds of fentanyl-involved overdose have significantly increased in recent years. Cook County data shows 262 Latinos died from an opioid overdose in 2020, nearly twice the number of deaths recorded in 2019. Joining us now with more are Sarah Richardson, Program Manager at the Office of Substance Use for Chicago Department of Public Health, Reina Torres Mendivil, Consul General of Mexico in Chicago, and Nicolás Zavala, Care Coordinator for Esperanza Health Centers. And I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us today. But I do want to start with you, Consul General, and thank you for being here also. You wrote an op-ed for the Tribune recently outlining how fentanyl trafficking and abuse affects Latinos in Chicago. How would you like to see Mexico working closer with the U.S. in stopping fentanyl from coming here?
I think we're already working together. That's the part of the many actions that should be taken to address this issue. Both governments are speaking and both governments are collaborating. Just a couple of days ago, Ambassador Ken Salazar, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico, issued a press release detailing the kind of conversations that he's been having with Mexican authorities. So this is a constant conversation, and it has to be addressed from many fronts, not only the law enforcement, of course, that's an important one, but it's a multifaceted issue. You cannot address the traffic of these illegal substances without addressing, for example, the traffic of weapons into Mexico that kind of end in the hands of criminals in Mexico. But what I meant to address in that op-ed is how this is affecting our communities on both sides of the border. And on top of all these things, all these legal aspects, law enforcement aspects, security aspects, is the human component, is the human factor, and how we all should be doing more addressing that particular part of this tragedy that's going on in our communities.
Definitely. And Sarah, we know that opioids can be dangerous, all opioids, but why is fentanyl such a cause for concern?
Yeah, thank you. So fentanyl is a particularly potent type of opioid, which means that it's very strong. It means that a very small amount of fentanyl ingested can result in an overdose. And what we're seeing in Chicago right now is that 80 to 90% of our overdose deaths involve fentanyl, and a growing number of those deaths involve fentanyl as the only opioid in that death. And so you're right, the number of Latinos in the community that have experienced a fatal overdose has significantly increased in recent years, and we've seen those increases across every demographic group, but the greatest increase has in fact been in our Latino communities in Chicago.
Right, and this might have to be related with the lack of Latinos trying to seek help for substance abuse, which takes me to you, Nicolás. What stigmas might prevent Latinos actually from seeking help?
Yeah, of course. One of the biggest things that we see is the moral argument, as in saying substance use and substance users are bad. And this type of negative stigma often causes people to not want to seek treatment. They want to keep it in the family. They want to keep it on the wrap. they sort of want to hide it from society. And not only the family, but also other members in the community might actually look down upon someone that is having difficulties with substances. This often causes that individual to not want to seek services, like I said before. And there's also a stigma actually involved in different types of services. I personally have heard different clients of ours that we've served that have given us even negative feedback from other locations. So unfortunately, this is a stigma that's not only found in our communities, but also in our providers across the country.
Consul General, going back with you, let's talk about policy. What policy changes would you like to see from the Biden administration to try to help address the inflow of fentanyl to the U.S.?
As I said, the dialogue on security issues is there. I mean, in every summit that the heads of state have had recently, this has been part of the agenda. And it's a constant conversation that it's different agencies and secretaries or ministries in Mexico have. But what we would like to see more is, as I mentioned, the human aspect. In a recent meeting that we had with then Minister of Foreign Relations, Marcelo Ebrard, that he kind of called the entire heads of the consulates, was, the intent of that meeting that we had with him in Washington. We had to do precisely what else we can do from our side. And I think that what has been missing in the U.S. administration is to address these issues, in particular the treatment, how do we communicate to the communities, how do we prevent addictions, and how we address those persons or the needs of those persons that are already addicted. How do we prevent deaths, for example? And let me give you just one example, as it has been mentioned here. The addictions and the need to provide information is increasing in our community. And there are many factors that will prevent our community to ask for help. So we need to start talking about this thing right now. We had in recent weeks the first case of repatriation of human remains of a Mexican national to Mexico of somebody that died as a consequence of an overdose of fentanyl. So that, shows right there that this is the right moment to intervene in our communities here.
Thank you, Consul General. Sarah, going back with you, how important do you think, and talking about the human aspect, right? How important is language when it comes to educating and treating Latinos about fentanyl?
Language is so important. So as Nicholas was mentioning, stigma is a big barrier to individuals seeking care and treatment, and also to families and communities in approaching this issue and understanding it and understanding what their loved ones are going through. And we know this has been studied, researchers have studied it, that the way we talk about people who use drugs in their communities directly impacts the kind of care that they receive and their willingness to go seek care. And so all of us can shift the way that we talk, shift from words like abuse to use, from addict and junkie to person with a substance use disorder, person with an opioid use disorder. And that shift alone will make a huge difference in the lives of people.
Great point. Thank you. Nicolas, what are some actually resources the Esperanza offers for people who need help?
Absolutely. So, thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this and being able to talk a little bit about the clinic. So Esperanza, of course, we are actually a full Spanish-speaking facility. So if you actually speak to our front desk staff, to our providers, our doctors, our counselors, our care coordinators, our nursing staff, we are able to speak to you in Spanish. So again, first of all, being able to speak Spanish and be able to reach our Latino-based population, it'll actually reduce those barriers and fears of not being able to be understood or heard. Besides that, of course, I specifically work with the MAT or Medication-Assisted Treatment Department. If there are cases where a client may need services outside of something that we offer, we are more than happy to be able to assist them in finding the services that they need, such as inpatient treatment or hospitalization, detox centers, etc. We're more than happy to just direct people where they need to go and be able to offer those services. But what's most important, in my opinion, is being able to get the information out into the community to know that there are services available for them. And also, there's actually fears about insurances. I know there's cases where clients
Nicolas,
might not want to actually get treatment.
Unfortunately, our time is up, but I do want to thank all of you for joining us today. Sarah Richardson, General Counsel Reina Torres Mendivil, and Nicolas Zavala. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After decades of neglect and disuse, the Illinois International Port District on the city's far south side is showing its age. But the port's leaders say it's long past time for federal, state, and private entities to support the port. They're asking for $50 to $100 million in funding to bring the port's infrastructure back to shipshape. And they say it's an investment that would pay off in a sturdier global supply chain, local jobs, and even reduce street traffic. Producer Erika Gunderson has a story.
For a long time, maybe people didn't realize the importance of the port, the impact that we have, because we bring all of the commodities, steel, iron, concrete, sand, all those things we need to build the infrastructure that we talk about. If the port were to go away or not be invested in, you have to imagine that those commodities are going to go elsewhere, right? Those jobs and those things will go there.
Illinois International Port District Executive Director Eric Varela came to the role in 2021 with years of experience in railroads and government affairs. He's also an attorney, which comes in handy as he's making a case for Illinois to fund the Port of Chicago.
We need to get the help of our elected officials and funding to do what we need to do at the port.
Varela says there is a lot they need to do. Decades of delayed maintenance and neglect at the 64-year-old port have resulted in a disintegrating dock wall, massive sinkholes, and roads in desperate need of resurfacing. That crumbling infrastructure creates a doom loop for the port because it has no taxing authority and depends on revenue from tenant businesses to pay for maintenance.
When you have a half a dock wall that can't be used, it's hard to bring shippers, right? It's hard to bring people, new businesses here when our infrastructure can't support what we're doing right now.
The Port of Chicago was built to export goods through the newly opened St. Lawrence Seaway. But as shipping patterns changed, the port saw a decline in revenue, says board member and director of the Urban Transportation Center at UIC, P.S. Sriraj.
The shift happened very gradually as the automobile and truck traffic became more ubiquitous. You saw the shift happening. And that connected very well with the railroads, but left the waterways behind.
That revenue decline led the port to its current state of disrepair. But Varela and Sriraj say they see more potential than ever in the port, especially after pandemic-induced supply chain fiascos that choked the economy in recent years.
Moving freight by water is the cheapest and most environmentally sustainable. If you could get it to us, then we can help get it out without having to rely solely on what's happening on the coasts.
It's a very geographically important location for freight movement, and that by extension is an advantage for the port because we can tap into that overburden of the road and rail network to release some of the burden off of those and then bring them to the port, which is an underutilized treasure.
It's an economic development engine, making sure that Chicago is a vital cog in that supply chain. You're bringing tax revenue in every time you bring a shipment in.
Siraj also says a busy port would result in less freight traffic on Chicago's notoriously congested roads.
Every year, we lose thousands of hours of delay on the roads, be it as a passenger or as a trucker. So how do you manage this mobility issue in a reasonable manner by making use of the resources that you already have?
Port District Board Chair Ivan Solis says workforce training partnerships could connect the people to the port and keep jobs in the city.
There's a lot of opportunities to make use of the vast land that we have available, bringing in jobs. We've had conversations with city colleges of Chicago. We've talked about how to prepare young kids to come and work unloading ships, right, working in these warehouses.
And that's only the beginning of Varela's grand vision for the port. But he says he believes that if we build it, they will come.
$100 million would be a tremendous improvement for this port, would put us back to full use of our infrastructure down here, as well as our primary infrastructure up at the lake. If we look at Indiana or Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, we see the businesses there, we see the demand is there. We hear from the industry that that demand is going to continue to be there. So the justification for Chicago to invest in this just very basic infrastructure needs is tremendous.
For Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, this is Erika Gunderson.
There's a lot more in Varela's master plan for the port. You can find more about that on our website. Up next, reporter Joanna Hernandez with some big-time winners in tech. She explains right after this.
Starting a business from scratch takes a lot of work, not to mention capital. A startup initiative from Google is helping some Latino entrepreneurs reach their goals. This year, 5 Chicagoans were awarded $150,000 for their startups. Joining us now to talk about their businesses and what they plan to do with the cash are 3 of the recipients. Ruben Garcia, CEO and co-founder of Certiverse, an online exam development system. Nico Aguilar, CEO and founder of Spico, a speech coach powered by AI technology that helps people with public speaking. And John Dillon, CEO and founder of Guardian Vets, a virtual database that allows customers to ask health-related questions about their pets to veterinary professionals. Now, thank you all for joining us today. Congratulations as well. Now, Nico, I want to start with you. Tell me about Spico and what it meant to win the Google grant.
Spico is an AI speech coach. You can use it by downloading our app and recording your voice to get feedback on things like ear filler words or your pausing patterns, or how to sound more dynamic with the tones that you're using with your voice. Winning this grant from Google is a game changer for us because Google is an expert at using AI for good, and that's exactly what we stand for.
That's awesome. And John, when you got the phone call that you got the grant, what was that feeling like for you?
It was incredible. We found out that we actually won at that event with the mayor, and the feeling was one of surprise and a lot of elation. So we're really grateful for the opportunity.
I can only imagine. And your company, Guardian Vets, operates 24/7 in over 47 states for a variety of veterinary hospitals across the U.S. What has the journey been like for you developing it?
It's been a lot of up and downs. Like I can imagine for anybody that runs and is part of a startup, it's a roller coaster, but it's an extremely rewarding journey, and you know, we're grateful to have the opportunity to do it.
And Ruben, tell me what it was for you as well. You mentioned you were in Mexico when you got the phone call.
I did. I mean, I was out of town, so I couldn't be there. But we're very grateful for it. I think that we're a little bit of what we do. Certiverse, what we do is we develop certification exams for a lot of different clients. Major corporations, enterprises, organizations use Certiverse to quickly launch certification exams, and certification exams are the future. A lot of individuals take them so that they can learn and improve their skills to employers. But winning the Google grant it's also game changing for us. I think that there's a lot of organizations out there that we've won lots of awards, but those awards are not backed with capital, and that's the really big difference. So for us, it's really going to accelerate the development of our product, and also we're going to be able to hire some employees that we weren't, we have planned later this year, so we're going to bring them on a lot earlier. That's
awesome. Ruben, can you tell me how that idea came about?
Yeah, so this is my second company. This is my second startup. First startup that I started as a company called Innovative Exams, and I invented a remote proctoring technology, got a patent for it. I sold that company in 2015, and the assessment industry, it's a very kind of outdated, not a lot of competition, and I really wanted to create competition on the exam side. I've been impacted by certification exams. That's how I paid my way through college at Loyola University. So I had a passion for really changing the industry and bringing those certification exams to more people.
Now, it's no surprise Latino businesses have increased over the years. According to the Small Business Administration, nearly 1 in 4 new businesses is Hispanic owned. In the decade preceding the pandemic, the number of Latino business owners increased by 34%. Now, John, what would you say is the importance of having Latino entrepreneurs in the industry?
I think it's incredibly important. I think the word from Google is something that we very much appreciate, and I'd love to see more of it.
And Ruben, what would you say were some of the obstacles you had to overcome? This is your second company. I can imagine there were plenty in some.
Yeah, I mean, a startup is, there's a lot of ups and downs, as John mentioned, and I think the biggest challenge is for Latinos is access to capital. I've raised close to $5 million to start this business. This is my second business, and even then, it's challenging to get investors. So, capital is obviously one of the most difficult challenges, and for a technology company, it's critical because we have to build a product very quickly and get it out to the market as quickly as possible.
Nico, did you also see some barriers along the way trying to develop your app?
Yeah, overcoming this access to capital is a real issue, especially in regions like the Midwest. And for us, Spico, we've been building Spico on our own, really independently, and that makes this award so much more valuable. But in addition to the cash, what also really matters is the collaboration with other founders, with experts, people who have done this before that can accelerate what you already are doing. That's almost equally as important.
I also want to talk about imposter syndrome in the Latino community. Have any of you felt like you experienced that at one point?
I think it's an interesting journey being from a Hispanic heritage and growing up in the United States and loving this country and accepting both cultures and celebrating both cultures. So it's a fun and rewarding experience to be able to go back and see my family in Mexico and Peru respectively, and at the same time appreciate all the wonderful things that were provided here. So it's something that brings us together.
How about you, Ruben? How would you say you've overcome imposter syndrome?
I don't know if I've overcome it. I mean, I go through it every day. I mean,
That's real.
we Certiverse, we're growing a lot. I've signed this year multi-billion-dollar companies. I mean, the world's biggest companies use Certiverse. A lot of them publicly traded, and sometimes I still can't believe it.
So is there a second you're like, hold on, did I just do this? Does that happen to you, Nico?
Yeah, my journey is wild. Just a couple years ago, I was so afraid of public speaking that there's no way you'd find me at this table. And now I'm running the world's most popular and powerful speech coaching tool. But the confession I have to make is I'm still so nervous of public speaking. And overcoming that is an everyday challenge for me and putting myself out there. But that's what Spico's about. It's built for everyday regular people like myself to help them overcome their fears, help them build their confidence so they can speak up.
Which is important to have these conversations. We all feel the same in some sense.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask, with all the blood, sweat, and tears you guys experienced it over the years, developing these apps, what advice would you give someone else who is going through this process and wants to start a startup?
I would say to just do it, and don't focus on necessarily the media. This is ironic, us being on TV right here, but just focus on taking care of your customers, focus on putting one foot in front of the other, focus on delivering value to your customers, and good things will come as long as you are consistent about execution, you focus on sales, and you take care of your customers and your team.
Now, we only have a few seconds, so one word of advice that you would give someone.
I would say go for it. It's never been an easier time to start a startup.
How about you?
I would say the same thing. Go for it and just be ready to make a lot of mistakes. And the thing about startups is that you fail a lot and you pivot, you turn around, and you get back on your feet and move forward.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, our thanks to Ruben Garcia, Nico Aguilar, and John Dillon. Up next, Cook County's new minimum wage takes effect. We share details right after this.
Some workers in Cook County will find a little more in their paychecks starting in July. That's because minimum wage is set to increase based on a formula established by a county ordinance. Here's more on why it might be a good idea for minimum wage workers to take a closer look at next week's paycheck.
July 1st, Cook County's minimum wage will be increasing for both tipped and non-tipped workers. For tipped workers, it will increase to $8 an hour, and for non-tipped workers, it will increase to $13.70. So every May into June, based on Cook County's minimum wage ordinance, the updated minimum wages are calculated to evaluate if an increase will occur. So this year, because of the inflationary cap, the minimum wages for both rates did increase. We absolutely encourage everyone to check their next paycheck to ensure that the updated increased wages are reflected in your paycheck. If you do not see them reflected, please call us at the Cook County Commission on Human Rights. We accept and investigate formal complaints, wages not representing correctly, the number of potential violations of the minimum wage ordinance, earned sick leave ordinance, or if you are discriminated or harassed against in your place of employment. Please give us a call, and you can always file a complaint, and you can file on your own, or you can ask a supporting agency or attorney to support you in filing that complaint.
You'll find more on Cook County's minimum wage increase on our website. Well, that's going to be our show for tonight. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And also don't forget to tune into Noticias Univision Chicago every weekday morning. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Alex Hernandez. Muy buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm, and proud sponsor of programming that offers advice and strategies to enhance the physical and mental well-being of fellow legal practitioners in Illinois.
Chicago buckles down for this weekend's NASCAR race. City residents choke down the world's worst air quality. President Biden visits Chicago amid major week of Supreme Court rulings, and Connor Bedard comes home to the Blackhawks. All in the Weekend Review tonight at 7.
Why are you laughing?
Think of the media focus. This is really going to put us on the map.
Frank, the problem